Truly delighted to welcome you all in this auspicious event of virtual book discussion subjected Public Service Ethics, a quest for Naitik Bharat, authored by Shri Prabhat Kumar, President IC Center for Governance, former Cabinet Secretary to Government of India and first Governor of Jharkhand. Welcome to all. And first of all, I would like to welcome the author of this book. He is the mentor of the all of the, I think, the listeners and the civil servants today. Shri Prabhat Kumar, President IC Center for Governor, former Cabinet Secretary of Government of India and first Governor of Jharkhand. Welcome, sir. Now I welcome to chief guest of this event, Shri Sanjay Kudhari, sir, former Chief Central Vigilance Commissioner, Central Vigilance Commission, Government of India. Most welcome, sir. Sir was also the Secretary to the Honorable Prime President of to Government of India, Honorable Shri Ramnath Kovindji. All of you are, I think, familiar with sir. Sir, most welcome, sir. We have in this event a very, I can say that the senior civil servant, the lead discussions for this book, Shri V. Srinivas, Secretary, Department of Administrative Reforms and Public Grievances, Government of India and Director General, National Center for Good Governance. Welcome, sir. We have the second lead discussant, Srimati Keshni Arora, former Chief Secretary, Government of Haryana. The all district collectors from aspirational district Government of India. The academicians from the public policy and governance centers and departments of the universities and the department. I think the eminent the academicians from the Indian Institute of Management, Government of India, we have invited for this book discussion. The professor and director from the institutes, my colleague from NCGG, Dr. A.P. Singh, Dr. B.S. Best and others, and ladies and gentlemen. So first of all, I would like to give a light of the CV of the author of the today, Shri Prabhat Kumar. Shri Prabhat Kumar is an IS officer of 1963 batch. He is currently the president of IC Center for Governance. He was the former cabinet secretary to the Government of India. He also served the people of Jharkhand as the first governor of the newly created state. He is MSc in physics and mathematics with credit. Later, he acquired his MSc in economics from the London School of Economics and Political Science with the mark of distinction. During his time in government, he was assigned various jobs in the state government as well as in the union government. Some of the positions in which he served were Secretary, Ministry of Textiles, Chairman Food Corporation of India, Development Commissioner Small Industries, Minister in Indian Embassy in Paris, Chairman State Road Corporation, Principal Secretary Industries, Principal Secretary Home, etc., beside the usual field posting in the districts. For more than 50 years, Prabhat Kumar has witnessed the drama of public governance with a keen eye and reflected on its different aspects. He specializes in logical analysis of concepts and synthesizing different viewpoints in realistic narrative. Welcome, sir. So now I would like to invite the lead discussants of both Shri V. Srinivasan and Madam Keshni Arora to discuss the chapters.
Respected Shri Prabhat Kumarji, respected Shri Sanjay Kothari ji, distinguished senior colleague Srimati Keshni ji, it's indeed a great privilege for the National Center for Good Governance and the Department of Administrative Reforms and Public Grievances to host today's book discussion on a book authored by a legendary civil servant, Shri Prabhat Kumarji. And in my many interactions with him, I have always been greatly inspired by the values that he has espoused and the moral strength that he conveyed, as also the sheer commitment to good governance that he had. So we are very deeply privileged to host you today, sir. And I'm also grateful to Sanjay Kothari ji for coming back to the Department of Administrative Reforms for his guiding role, being a leading light in the sector of good governance. And of course, I fondly remember the number of meetings that he had in inculcating ethical values for young civil servants, particularly in his tenure as CVC, which was quite transformational, I thought. And having attended numerous meetings with him, I thought he would be most apt to chair this session. Let me also extend a warm welcome to Srimati Keshni ji. We have received you at the NCGG before on the role of Chief Secretary, and today we are privileged to host you again. I have a brief intervention on Prabhatji's book, and I would share it with all distinguished participants. The monograph seeks to highlight the crucial element of human character, the practice of ethical principles as a way of life. Shri Prabhat Kumarji believes that India needs a movement of ethical India to tide over the crisis of ethics in every profession. The important elements of this crisis are inefficient delivery of public service, rampant corruption at all levels, lack of civil society participation, and there are significant ramifications to the quality and trustworthiness of the public governance system. Ethics in public service is an essential component of parliamentary democracy. It encompasses serving the people, helping the weak, the poor, the downtrodden, and public servants should be imbued with ethical spirit of compassion, empathy, understanding of issues which face the community in which the public servant works. So India's citizens expect a government that looks after their needs, a government that is responsive, that acts fairly and impartially. This, in essence, is the DNA of ethics in public service. A corruption-free nation with dedicated public servants imbibed with ethical spirit is what the country needs. The motto that I am ethical, I am accountable, and the IAS, imbibed in the words Shilam Paramam Bhushanam at the LBS-NA Academy, holds very much true for modern-day public servants. There are 12 chapters in the book, and Shri Prabhat Kumarji has discussed the related aspects covering the perceptions of civil service, role of democratic institutions, elements of understanding modern principles, and he has eloquently argued the virtues of honesty, abiding by rules, or obeying the orders of seniors are simply not enough for public servants. They need to be innovative, imaginative, and sympathetic to the needs of the people. Adoption of practices enunciated in the book will give a quantum leap to India's prestige in the Committee of Nations and also make the nation more competitive in a multiplicity of global endeavors. It is important to recognize Shri Prabhat Kumarji's signal contribution and salute him for his services to the nation. Shri Prabhat Kumarji's hypothesis is that ethics of public service should be the cornerstone of all trainings of union government and state governments. Civil servants should be told that they should endeavor to go beyond their normal duty to serve the public better, that ethics makes their duty bigger. It makes the duty more meaningful, it makes their duty more uplifting. Ethics of public service urges us to do more than what is expected of us. I do recall conducting so many night halls in tehsil offices, patwar ghars, and it was sheer patriotism or a sense of commitment to service that I often found, and I find reflection of those very voices that I experienced as a young civil servant when I went through the several pages of the book, when I noticed young officers standing in the front lines of duty. Popular discontent with the conduct of civil services has been a universal phenomenon when the citizen is asked to wait for legitimate rights from government and there is dilution in the integrity of institutions. This happens when civil servants consider themselves bigger than the institution to which they belong, showing a contempt for the service in which they spend their life. It is well recognized that India has an incorruptible system of recruiting higher civil services based entirely on merit. They undergo rigorous training in their disciplines and are given enormous responsibilities from their first day of posting. While the civil servants have done reasonably well in maintaining the stability of the nation and the system of governance, they have suffered from a bias to the status quo, inability to learn from the future, working in compartments rather than trying cross-cutting initiatives, and failing to be seen as people-friendly. One of the major mistakes of senior bureaucrats is to act alone. Most of the officers who could have set the standards of service were loners. The individual alone, however competent and charismatic, does not possess the endowments to overcome the inertia of the system. Team building is essentially based on shared perspectives and shared goals. A forceful boss can start an initiative but cannot bring behavioral change in his subordinates. After his departure, the initiative is forgotten or replaced by the initiative of his successor. As Shri Prabhat Kumarji says, the civil servants need to build an identity of their own, fix benchmarks for conduct and processes, and create safeguards against failing to deliver services to the people. Too long, we have toyed with the conservative approaches to reform the civil service and have had limited success in infusing vigor in its functioning. The reforms suggested and implemented have often lacked depth and generally been one-dimensional. Benjamin Franklin's statement, "He that is secure is not safe," applies to the Indian bureaucrat. Shri Prabhat Kumarji says that the Indian bureaucracy today needs a new narrative. It has to come out of its latent conservatism to discover a fresh idiom. And in this regard, Mission Karma Yogi is a welcome initiative expected to provide precious capacity building in the behavioral attributes of civil servants. Ethics of public services can help lay the strong foundation of governance in the third decade of the 21st century. There are 8 key components of ethical infrastructure and governance as identified by the OECD, and these are political commitment, effective legal framework, efficient accountability mechanisms, workable codes of conduct, professional socialization mechanisms, supportive public service conditions, existence of central ethics, and an active civil society to act as a watchdog over the actions of officials. Shri Prabhat Kumarji has identified several sterling examples of unflinching adherence to the standards of public service. I've had the privilege to serve with a number of officials whom he has cited. Late Shri Gajendra Haldia ji, Shri Balwinder Kumar ji, Shri Anil Swarup ji, Shri Amarjit Singh ji, Shri Jayesh Ranjan, Shri Prabhakar Deshmukh, Rajendra Baharud, Umakant Umrao, Jitendra Soni, Durga Shakti Nagpal, Shrikar Pardeshi, each one of them has stood out as a high-performing civil servant, critical to good governance and to the effective delivery of public services while finding an identity in public perception. There are several young officers whom I wish to cite: Kirti Jalli, Varnali Deka, Krishna Bhaskar, Ghansham Thori, Ashish Srivastava, Bhagwati Prasad, Sajid Babu, Adra Vamsi, Shubham Saxena, Adila Abdullah, Harichandana Dasari, officers who have stood in the front lines of duty, putting services above self, representing the foundational and non-negotiable values of ethics of public service. The civil servant of the 21st century will have to be more accountable for his services to the common man, develop an understanding that whatever decision he makes needs to balance the different aspects of the whole system. Functioning of countries is measured in the quality of governance. And there are traits which should not be followed up. And ethics is very fragile. It is built with a lot of effort over time, but can be demolished with a single act of good selfishness or greed. There is tremendous gratification that can be drawn from doing good for the society, in becoming role models for others, particularly the younger generation, the satisfaction that one's life has touched other people's lives. To conclude, let me compliment the IC Center of Governance for commencing the Alliance of Changemakers webinars. In fact, we at the NCGG have also had this good governance series of webinars, and today is the 19th webinar in this series that we have conducted. And Shri Sanjay Kudhari ji has been guiding us on how to take this initiative forward. The rough definition of the ethics in public service is that ethics of public service in its widest connotation includes legitimate, selfless exercise of the position, the authority, power, and influence that go with it, in the service of the people and beyond the boundaries of one's job. So it is doing more than what the law requires and less than what the law permits. In fact, I found great inspiration in reading the book. And I wish to quote what one of my mentors, Dr. Duvur Subbarao, told me when I asked him how does he see the 21st century civil servants against 20th century civil servants, which he was. So he said there is really no difference in the way we have to work. Commitment to larger public good against all odds remains the overwhelming motto. So when I read your book, sir, I was greatly inspired, and I requested you that we would be happy to convene this session with you today. And thank you very much for joining us once again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shri.
Now I would like to invite Madam Keshni Arora ji to speak to discuss on this book.
Thank you very much.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you very much. Respected Shri Prabhat Kumar ji, esteemed Shri Sanjay Kothari ji, distinguished Mr. V. Srinivas, dear young colleagues and experts in the field. It is my great privilege to be associated with the book discussion on a book written by an upright and honest civil servant with a long, illustrious career. I thank Mr. Sanjay Kothari and Mr. Srinivas, who are themselves bureaucrats of great reputation of integrity and honesty. The book is a product of so many decades of Shri Prabhat Kumar's experience as a practitioner and a teacher of ethics. I'm fascinated by the way the author weaves through so many schools of thought and ultimately reaches his goal of Naitik Bharat. There's a very relevant quote in the book by C. Rice. There is no greater challenge and there is no greater honor than to be in public service. Gives one a lot of pride in service. The author rightly calls for an honest self-assessment of components of ethics of a public servant. Taking the link from Mr. Srinivas, I'll further brief you about the book and share the gist of some of my experiences. The author especially emphasizes that the public servant ought to learn the art of listening and the art of communication. The art of listening helps public servant to get valuable information from the public and the subordinates. He gives an example of Mr. V.P. Singh, how he was a great listener. I'm totally in agreement with you, sir. I looked after public procurement for 5 years in the state of Haryana, and I realized listening helped me to gather information and to take timely corrective decisions despite contrasting pressures. The effective leader of an organization must explore the structural barriers to communication and take preventive action accordingly. The other person certainly feels appreciated, which can lead to more honest and productive communication. With time, sir, I also learned that the communication channels with bosses should also be very open so that you can ring them up anytime. This is particularly needed when, while taking ethical decision, you have some conflict with a political boss or public man. And you should be the first one to tell the boss all the facts before he gets to know from other sources. Active communication with the organizers of anti-Mandal Commission campaigner helped me to control law and order situation in Yamunanagar district when I was deputy commissioner. A young boy came in the morning when I was on my round. Didi, there are some outside miscreants who have come to set the buildings on fire. Timely information helped me to save the city. Further, sir, you have talked of choices and dilemmas. An ethical choice involves attributing equality to the alternatives, such as wrong and right, true and false, better or worse. You're right, it is choice of the public servant as to what is right and what is wrong. They would sometimes need to seek advice. This brings forth the concept of mentoring, where young bureaucrats can be assigned to senior mentors. In Haryana's training policy, we have included this concept and are trying to implement it. Mr. Prabhat Kumar further emphasizes that we should have the courage to say, I'm sorry. He says admitting a mistake is the first step towards self-improvement and creating a better relationship with the colleagues. He gives the example of a chief minister who, after becoming a defense minister, felt sorry for having transferred Mr. Prabhat Kumar wrongly. This clearly proves that author had the spine to take courageous decisions. It is rightly said, खुदी को कर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से खुद पूछे बता तेरी रजा क्या है. Mr. Prabhat Kumar states he doesn't want to write an autobiography because he dreads to be ridiculed for broadcasting the account of an inconsequential life. But his one example of the president calling him to issue order for a rule of the president at the national level and he refusing to issue order makes us more enthused to read his experiences in his autobiography. We request Mr. Prabhat Kumarji to write his autobiography for all of us to learn from his experiences. He may also like to give examples as to what strategies are to be used for tactful handling of complex situations involving ethical decision making. The book also talks of ethical alignment and brings forth the concepts of integrity, efficiency, accountability, and justice. He is of the firm view that people can be trained to catch ethics. The contribution made by IC Center by teaching ethics and governance is phenomenal. The training in ethics should develop effective methodology to promote integrity and combat corruption through self-introspection and qualitative thinking. The key takeaway from all of us is that a group of civil servants must combine to write case studies about their experiences for young bureaucrats to learn. This would help the civil servants to understand the complexity of ethical dilemmas and applying a decision making framework after ethical analysis of alternative solutions. The author rightly says his belief that there's nothing universally ethically wrong or ethically right in decision making. The ethical decisions have a cost that may be as insignificant as a minor inconvenience or as serious as having to leave a job. There have been cases when ethical decisions have led to definite and distinct advantage. In fact, we all gained positions because of our ethical decisions. On the other hand, unethical decisions can result in severe penalization. The ethical decision, however, whatever may be the case, leaves one more at peace with oneself and more in love with surroundings. What ethics requires from us, Sir rightly says, is making a judgment that we can logically explain, establish, and we are able and willing to defend. I feel, from my experience, succeeding on an ethical path is always a challenge. But when one gets to succeed, one gets that kick, and one rises high in public and one's own estimation. Frankly speaking, pressures to take wrong decisions also reduces with time when people know your reputation. So these are advantages you get from ethical decision making. Another question raised by the author is whether leadership is synonymous with moral leadership. The answer is not necessarily. Sometimes good leaders make poor decisions, and we can also learn from bad leaders. To assume that all good leaders are good people is being blind to the reality. What author is disturbed about is the ailment of unhealthy leadership eroding a value-based system, rightly so. Generally, it is found that bureaucrats who are honest also feel shy to take bold decisions. The author shows by his experience that we must take decisions which are in public interest and very boldly. A case study narrated by him how he constituted a committee under Dr. Kalam to find a solution to open internet to public service providers, which led to $100 billion industry because he was of the firm view that it was the right thing to do in the service of people. This is certainly a great contribution by you, sir. And today, all the virtual meets are a result of visionary decision making by you as Cabinet Secretary. The focus has to be on building institutional capacity and integrity. Institutional integrity implies correct functioning of the institution and adherence to its purpose. The example of UPSC is a case in point as to how the process is so self-driven. Improving institutional ethics can certainly prove to be a game changer in bringing about good governance. In the epilogue, the author calls for Naitik Bharat and the need to focus on inner renewal, spiritual growth, and regeneration of values. Emphasis has to be on building credibility of our civil services and institutions and create public trust. As you already have said, Mr. Srinivas, the public perception is very important. We must rescue our young members from the imminent frustration and cynicism. The author rightly strikes a note and says, if we fail to infuse a sense of direction with an ethical campus, everything will go out of control. The choice is ours, and we have to choose today. He also has urged the Prime Minister to give a call on the concept of Naitik Bharat developed by IC Center for bringing ethics central stage for all walks of life in all the professions, starting from public governance. Naitik Bharat, he says, is a created future, quote unquote, which is not going to happen if we don't make it happen collectively. The reading of books arms us with identifying guiding principles and ensuring that ethics doesn't collapse to vested interests. I congratulate IC Center for Governance for bringing out this book. This exposition will go a long way in improving the quality of governance. Let's all today decide that we will work towards it. Thank you very much. Grateful.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We are really very, very benefited as an eminent resource person in our international training program, and they are very, very blessed. Your kind suggestions and your experience. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much. Since we have invited the 2019 and 2020 IS officers, and they are very young, so let me introduce, I think, the chief guest of today's Shri Sanjay Kudhari, sir. Sir. Hi. Yes. Shri Sanjay Kudhari ji is an IS officer of 1978 batch Haryana cadre. He was the former Chief Central Vigilance Commissioner to the Government of India. He served various important positions at the state level such as District Magistrate of Gurgaon, Home Secretariat, Union Territory of Chandigarh, and Chairman, Managing Director, Director and Secretary of Haryana Tourism. He has also been Secretary of Revenue and Rehabilitation, Personnel, Health, Cultural Affairs and Public Relations in the state of Haryana. In the central government, he has worked in the Ministry of Tourism, Administrative Reforms and Public Grievance and Pension Departments. In August 2014, he was appointed as Secretary to the Government of India, Ministry of Personnel, Public Grievance and Pensions, Department of Personnel and Training. In November 2016, he was appointed as the Chief of the Government's Head Hunter, the Public Enterprises Selection Board. In July 2017, he named as the Secretary to the Honorable President of India, Shri Ramnath Kovind. On April 25, 2020, he was appointed as the Central Vigilance Commissioner to the Government of India. He has a master's degrees in physics and master's in business administration from the United Kingdom. He has spent about 15 years in the field of tourism, both at the center and the state level, and more than 5 years in personnel and administrative reforms in the state of Haryana, and for more than a couple of years at the center. The primary concern and interest of Kudhari has been in the creation of institutions, often innovative and pioneering the carrying out reforms for good governance and documenting them. He has published more than 30 articles on administrative reforms, city development and subjects pertaining to the tourism. Welcome, sir. We are very blessed to hear from your side.
Thank you, Poonam ji. Respected Shri Prabhat Kumar ji, the author of the book, distinguished co-panelist, Mrs. Keshni Anand Arora, a very old friend, Mr. Srinivas, a very dear colleague and friends, and my younger colleagues. In fact, most of the things have been said by Mr. Srinivas and Keshni, but let me recall on 1st November, Mr. Prabhat Kumar ji gave me this book, Public Service Ethics. He has written in the book, with compliments, hope our ideas resonate. So what I'm planning to do is take some of these ideas from this. Is a very, very interesting book, and then correlate this thing. The first thing which I would like to highlight was what Keshni has also said. This is a part of Civil Services in India, Perception and Conflict, page 10. He says, the subtitle says, I think, there is no higher calling in terms of a career than public service, which is a chance to make a difference in people's lives and improve the world. This is a quote from Jacob Blue. Very, very apt, very, very correct. And let me also tell you that in 2015, I was in Mussoorie Academy and I called the first 10 rank holders in the civil services. I interacted with them, very interesting interaction. And in between, some of them had come after leaving the multinationals. They asked me, sir, the salary is too little. So I told them, people do not join the service for the salary. If you wanted a higher salary, you could have continued in the multinational. So that is the thing which has been highlighted in this. The second point which I would like to mention in continuation to this is in 2016, 15-16, when I was Secretary Personnel, I interacted with young officers in almost all the academies. I had a very interesting question to ask them. I asked them, why have you joined the service? No one asked me this question when I joined the academy. And most of them said for family reason, for status, for career. Very few of them said for the citizens of India. That is the main thing. This takes me to page 25 of Mr. Prabhat Kumar's book. Your job is to make the life of the citizen easy. That is the reason you are a government servant. You are the servant of the government. And that is what we are paid for. Your main stakeholder is the citizen. And if we go by Gandhiji's talisman, it is clear the poorest of the poor gets the highest priority. On page 25, Mr. Prabhat Kumar writes, the attitude of being indifferent to the wishes of the people is an attitude inherited from the colonial predecessors who had been reared in believing that only they knew best. So I think India became independence in 1947. We are a part of this country and we are as much a citizen of India as anyone else. This takes me to another quote which is again very, very interesting, which I very, very strongly believe. This is on page 25. I would like to read it out. It is an accepted fact that the public servants, being part of the larger society, cannot remain untouched by the general practices in the society. But it is equally true that ubiquitous official corruption tends to reinforce social corruption. It is natural for the children of corrupt public servants to be influenced by their parents' behavior. The cases of sons and daughters of officers disregarding civic regulations are too common in many countries. I am a firm believer that in the present salary that we get, we can live a very honest and decent life. In fact, let me also say that some of our bright officers try to quote that my colleague in multinational has 3 phones, 2 cars, 1 for himself, 1 for his wife. If you want it, please join that. This service is for dedication, for making a change in the life of the people. And I still very strongly believe that we have to contribute towards to the society. This takes me to page 41 of the book. Very interesting. The cynics are of the view that every individual in public life has a price. A big challenge to my young colleague. We have come on the basis of a competitive exam on a totally transparent process. Can we be purchased? I think the dedication that we have and our families have, I don't think we can be purchased. Please think it over. This is a point to ponder over. On page 61, Mr. Prabhat Kumar has quoted an example. This is in the box, that when he was going for a function as a governor, he saw some children in crutches. And instead, he cancelled his program, took them to the hospital, and with surgeries, they improved. Now, lot of young officers, middle officers, they show me the rule. How can I take the decision? He has quoted that very interesting quote, you can do anything. Sorry, the quote is, public servants carry the sovereign authority of the state, can go beyond your assigned work. It's the babus, the clerical staff which says, show me where this task has been done. You can take your own decision, you can do whatever you like, but with a very big rider. You should not have your own agenda. It should be the agenda of the public, it should be the agenda of the poor. Recently, we had an interaction with Mr. Armstrong, a 2009 batch Nagaland officer who built 100 kilometers of road from his own fund and only because of his conviction. So please forget the younger lot. I would request, you can take any decision in public faith. And the government backs you, that I can say you, tell you as secretary personal, which I helped for 2 years. One very critical comment which Mr. Prabhat Kumar makes on page 83, which Keshni also says, unfortunately, humility is in very short supply in our civil servants at all levels. In fact, let me quote a very interesting Italian proverb. This is by Cortana. Once the game of chess is finished, the king and the pawn go into the same box. It means there is no room for arrogance or ego, irrespective of one's position. Maintain your humility. You are a part of this country. This also takes me to what Keshni was saying when she was in Yamunanagar. A lot of information comes if you are accessible, if you take all calls. Try and take all calls. You should be accessible to people. You are paid for this. Even without appointment, you should make people. Another very, very interesting quote which has been made by Mr. Prabhat Kumar. This is on page 19. I would like to read it out for you. And very, very important. He quotes, I quote, with the benefit of my hindsight, I realize that I could have done many more good things in various assignments that I held during a 37-year career in the All India services. Though I have much to be satisfied with, the thought that there was nobody to guide me when needed bothers me in reflection. All of us need mentors. As CVC, we had made a mentorship scheme. In some cases, mentorship was 4-5 years. I strongly believe you need mentorship throughout your life. And even after retirement, I still consult a lot of my colleagues when I am in trouble. And for banks, they have adopted it. I'm giving a link. The mentorship scheme is on the CVC site. The PSU has already issued the circular. Number of services have issued the circular. In fact, at times, your best person to share your thoughts is your spouse. Most of the things you share with your wife. In some cases about your postings, you cannot share your thoughts with your batchmates, may be dangerous. But in this room, before I hear, in fact, I have taken permission of Mr. Prabhat Kumarji, you can consult him whenever you want. We are giving you his mobile number and the email ID. Keshni has been a great mentor of people, including me. I am also ready to mentor you. Srinivas has a very busy job, but I'm sure he will find some time to mentor you. And if he can't mentor you, we'll tell you who would be the best person to mentor you. One or two small points I thought I'll also mention that Mr. Prabhat, we all IS officers, civil servants are known as journalists. He's come out with the theory that civil servant is a professional of the res publica, that is public interest. And I would request him when he speaks to elaborate this. I'm repeating what has been already said, that it is a common experience to observe bosses, both political and bureaucratic, who are in love with their own voices, averse to listening this subordinates in the meeting. Very few of us are good listeners among civil servants of our country. I would request you, as Mr. Srinivas has been saying, that we have to listen to others. We have to see how ethical standards are followed. I would just like to end with the same thing. It's a repeat. Condoleezza Rice says, there's no greater challenge and there's no greater honor than to be in public service. Thank you very much, and all the best to all our younger colleagues who are here.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Sir, now I would like to invite Shri Prabhat Kumar, sir, to speak on and to give some light on this book. So I think to begin this, I would like to sum up to tell one or two lines that the book Public Service Ethics, A Quest for Naitik Bharat is one of its kind attempt to highlight the multiple dimensions of a very crucial element of human character, the practice of ethical principles as a way of life. In this effort, he has brought to bear the enormous experience and background in public service over a lifetime, shouldering a variety of significant roles and responsibilities. Through the 12 chapters of the book, he has beautifully and effectively weaves the related aspects, including issues that encompass the corruption, the perception about the civil service, role of democratic institutions, and elements of the understanding the modern principle of ethics to drive home his point. Thank you so much, sir. Now we are very keen to listen you from your side. Thank you so much, sir. Please welcome. Please give the light on your book. Thank you, sir. Please welcome.
Thank you,
Shri
Poonam.
Prabhat Kumar.
Thank you, Poonam ji. Thank you very much.
Welcome, sir.
Shri Sanjay Kothari ji, Dr. Srinivas, Keshni Arora ji, my friends from the IC Center, and young friends of the All India services that are present today. Firstly, I must say that I'm grateful to the National Center for Good Governance for considering the book worthy of a discussion. And I'm also grateful to Sanjay, Srinivas, and to Keshni ji for saying such nice things about the book. See, let me clarify that this is not my book alone. In fact, the book grew out of the discussions, of the conversations that we have had in the core group of the IC Center for months. I have also interacted with a number of officers of various seniorities, right to, the probationers. And that is how this book has come out. Ethics of governance is an article of faith with the IC Center for Governance with which I am associated. The center has also developed a unique module for training in ethics, and that has been hugely appreciated by members of the All India services, central services, as well as the executives of public sector entities. In fact, I would welcome Keshni ji if she has time and she is inclined, if she can, she can be a part of the IC Center for Governance.
Grateful, sir. I will always be there.
Yes, there are so many things in which we need guidance. We don't have the final word, and that is why we would like to engage with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Grateful, sir.
After Keshni ji and Srinivas ji and Sanjay ji, I don't think there's much left for me to talk about the book. In fact, I'm overwhelmed by your words. I think that you have brought out more than what I had written in the book. But since we have some younger officers also, I would like to flag a couple of points. The context of ethics of public service. Firstly, I consider the subject of ethics very important. I think that it is the soul of good governance. I think that the young officers and the new entrants to the civil service are entitled to deliberate on the ethics of their profession. You know, this is an opportunity which we were denied. Our generation was denied. We spent our entire career without being told that our first priority was serving the people, not administering the country. You see, we were told that we were administrators. I am talking of my generation. You know, my generation was not familiar with the word ethics of their profession. We were concerned with good things like integrity, efficiency, even accountability and productivity. But ethics was not a part of our official lexicon. Fortunately now, ethics is in the air. A lot is being said about ethics. We are talking of ethics of business, we are talking of ethics of media, talking even about ethics of technology, of artificial intelligence. In fact, there is a latest debate about, you know, the advancing technology which is entering our every nook and corner of our life, whether it should be ethical. You know, currently I'm reading a book, a very interesting book. And if you are interested, kindly go through this book. It is on the subject of ethics of technologies which are coming. The book is called System of. So now, friends, you know, through my book and the trainings of the IC Center for Governance, we want to address archetypical civil servant. Somebody who is like me when I was young, uncomplicated but naive, intelligent but unwise, honest but bound by rules. You know, an efficient officer discharging his duties diligently as per the job description. You know, we want to engage with them. We don't want to engage with the delinquent. We don't want to engage with the super achievers because they have their own chosen way. They will not perhaps listen to us. But rest of the civil servants, who are more than 90%, we want to engage with them. I'm not saying that, you know, the civil servants are devoid of ethical qualities, ethical attributes. What I want to emphasize is, the book also I have said this, and you have quoted. I want to emphasize that we have failed to make them aware of their potential, what they have inside them, what they can do. You know, merely telling them to follow the rules and regulations honestly and not take bribe, it is not enough. They need to be made more aware of putting in their best in the service of the people. They must be nudged to put two essential attributes, service, in their day-to-day job: justice and compassion. Justice and compassion. You know, it is very elementary, it's simplistic to say that ethics of public servants is synonymous with following the rules and insulate themselves from temptations. Many of my colleagues thought like that. Many of my colleagues thought. But in my view, that is an incomplete understanding of ethics. In the book, I have tried to illustrate other dimensions of ethics by giving examples. And we have got examples from Keshni ji and from Srinivas and Jayant. and Sanjay. Now, I just want to tell my young friends that I'm not an evangelist. I'm not even a motivator. But I try to nudge. I try to nudge the officers to do what is inside them, what they can do. And as Keshniji says, that I have tried to disaggregate the attributes of ethical civil service. There are so many characteristics like humility, compassion, commitment, authenticity. Authenticity is very important. And even keeping one's word. All these attributes taken together, they make up an ethical personality. If you read closely the book, I have tried to present a three-layered concept of ethics. Three-layered. There are three layers. And these three layers, when they are put together, then they create a full architecture of ethics of public. The first layer is doing what is right. That is obvious. That is unambiguous. We are quite familiar with it. Doing what is right is ethical. Doing what is right and not doing it is unethical. So this is the first layer. The second layer is a little more interesting. It is that doing not only what is right, but also just. Doing not only what is efficient, but also compassionate. So these two attributes of justice and compassion, they enter the second layer of what I called the three-layered concept. And the third layer is doing more than what the law requires. This third layer opens up. It says that ethics of public service is not a close-ended concept. It's an open-ended concept. Sky is the limit. Do more than what the law requires. Do more than what the charter of your duties requires. And therefore, it becomes, an open-ended thing. Fortunately, that there are hundreds of exemplars. I have given some exemplars in my book. Srinivas ji has mentioned so many others. There are hundreds of these exemplars which illustrate the validity of this three-layered approach. In my view, they are the hopes of our service. We in the center, we celebrate them. On a platform called Alliance of Changemakers, we showcase their stories and we get inspired by them. Sanjay ji mentioned about this young officer, Armstrong Pame of Manipur cadre, who built a 100-kilometer road in a very remote hilly area. And he, in this Alliance of Changemakers, he made a very telling statement. He said that for long, the civil servant has remained behind a curtain. He said it is high time that we throw the veil out and we show what we are all about. Let the people see us. Let us not be scared. So I think, I should end. I would end by saying very interesting. I think, it will be an interesting study to find out how many hours are devoted to ethics and spirit of service during the induction training at Lal Bahadur Shastri and other academies, other service academies. I can hazard a guess. Less than 1% of the total number of hours of training are devoted to ethics. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not familiar with the present course structure. But I would certainly like to know if it is more than that. And I hope that the Mission Karmyogi changes this. I go to the Indian Institute of Public Administration to take a session on ethics of public service to the upper batch of officers, advanced program on public administration. They call me almost every year. And it is a 2-hour session, a year-long program. At the beginning of the session, I asked the participants whether a session on ethics fits into their 1-year-long program, whether it gels with the program as a whole. And invariably, the response is no. They don't think that ethics is really an important subject so far as public administration is concerned. Now, this is the place we give to training ethics in our profession. So I think, and my advice to my young friends is that in your workplace, in the collectorate, in the department that you are working, please put 2 framed pictures per chamber. The preamble to the Constitution and Mahatma Gandhi's talisman. I think these 2 taken together, they depict the 3-layered concept of public service that I have just mentioned. Every officer should have these 2 things displayed. In my house, they are displayed. I saw them in the Judicial Academy in Ranchi, prominently displayed, the preamble to the Constitution. I think these are things that perhaps, these are little things that you can do. And I would also suggest, I'm excited by what Sanjay ji said about this mentorship scheme. I think it's a very good idea to bring, integrity between the seniorities. And I am all for it. I would like to be a participant in this mentorship scheme. And I also suggest to Srinivas ji and to Professor Poonam that, an ethics center may be created in the National Center for Good. It can be a clearing house for all issues concerned with ethics. And also, it can search for new instruments for strengthening ethical culture within civil society. Today, we have only one instrument, that is training. Can we think of other instruments, like, for example, supportive legislation, like, for example, a code of ethics which is actionable, like, for example, recruitment of value-fit individuals, not skill-fit, but value-fit individuals. And also, this center could think of measurement of ethics in the performance of public servants. So with these words, I think, the book is still a work in progress. It does not make any final statements. I'm receiving comments and suggestions for improving the contents. And your observations, Keshni ji and Sanjay ji and Srinivas ji, I think your observations will add value to the subject. And I'll try to incorporate your views in the next edition of the book, which is will likely to come during the current year. So thank you very much. And if there's any discussion, any observations, any comments, well, I'll be grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the comments. In the web room, we have 2 very eminent personalities. Mr. Balwinder Kumar is featured in the book also as a man who has held up institutional ethics and has redefined governance models. We were together in the Ministry of Textiles. In fact, Prabhatji himself was in the Ministry of Textiles, so we do have a shared history of serving there. So, Balvinderji, can I request you to give some comments on this occasion? No, he's there, sir. He's there. Balvinderji, can I request you? Yes.
Please unmute, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. But I'm not prepared to speak at this moment. But certainly it is a very good piece to learn. In fact, there are various things. Although during the service, these all things are in our subconscious mind, that is behind the back, but they don't come forward. So it is a very nice piece that all these things have been put together and very educative. In fact, I have gone through the book and learned quite a lot about the experiences the author has put in the book. So I give him best wishes for it. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Balvinderji. Always happy to have you in our seminars. We also have another very senior professor, Professor Ramesh Arora, a man who has taught young administrators for several. In fact, he was teaching me when I was a probationer for the last 35 years. I've seen him maybe longer. Professor Ramesh Arora ji, would you like to speak? Because he has often spoken and written on ethics in public service. Professor Ramesh ji, please.
Thank you very much. I was listening to the whole debate and the discussion and was very much impressed with the new theoretical approach given to ethics in public service by Prabhat Kumarji, very distinguished civil servant. You know, when A.D. Golwala gave his report on public administration in India, he said there should be 3 maxims of good governance in India. First, efficiency, second, economy, and third, integrity. And then there have been, of course, number of reports, whether it is the ARC report 1, the first report on Lokayukt and Lokpal, Santhanam Commission reports, the report of the second Administrative Reforms Commission and the institution. Unfortunately, it has never been a priority of the government, any government at the state level. If you look at the election manifestos of all political parties, curbing corruption has never been a priority. It has, of course, been a silent maxim and principle that has been guiding the working of all government administrators. They all really want to be very ethical. It's good. But unfortunately, not much of effort has been undertaken to curb corruption at the middle and the lower level of bureaucracy, because corruption generally takes place at the cutting edge level, and the citizen is really harassed because of the attitude of the people working at the lower level. And monitoring is very, very rather lackluster. Prakash Tandon, former chairman of State Trading Corporation, Punjab National Bank, said, we need only one administrative reform in this country, that is monitoring of the lower level officers by the senior officers. I think we are lacking on this front. We have excellent administrators who are very honest in the All India services, central services, even state services. But then they don't keep an eye on the people who are working under them. Their attitude, their values, their behavior, their demeanor, their character generally is not controlled properly. I'm really sorry to say. But when Mr. Prabhat Kumar comes out with this idea of ethics, I think it should become a movement. It was never a mission in this country to curb corruption. Integrity has not been its most sterling prime value for administrators to look after. Mainly, we are interested in efficiency, effectiveness, welfareism, citizen administration, fine. But I, as a student of public administration, feel that it should also, Naitik Bharat, I think I like the word. It should become a mission. It should become a movement in this country. With Mr. Modi having a number of concepts of India making Shresht Bharat and a Swachh Bharat, I think Naitik Bharat is one particular slogan that ought to become an ingrained ethical ingredient of the governmental functioning today. For all the things that he has written, there is a lot of new perspective. And I must congratulate him. I have read a number of books on ethics and also written something. But this book is really new, something innovative. I had been one of the trainee officers in Pune, where he was there as a faculty member. Very humble, very thoughtful, very profound. But I think this book is a landmark book. And I congratulate all the organizers for having this book discussion, the people who participated in this. And I do hope that this should become a very popular book among all administrators. I don't know, but I think Mr. Srinivas can do something, make a small, maybe 10-page summary of the book, publish it on behalf of the government, and distribute to all civil servants of the all India level, central services. 10 pages book, the main ideas. And they should also become rather the basic ambassadors of honesty in this country. What I've seen is honesty is alive in this country. It is vibrant in this country. But wherever there's opportunity to become dishonest at the lower level, then people really become dishonest. Let's plug these opportunities for corruption. And for that, I think we are doing a lot of work. But my congratulations and regards to Prabhat Kumarji. I know him not only directly now after having met him, but also through Mr. A.P. Saxena, my guide and mentor, who was in revenue service. And I know about him. And I congratulate you, sir, Mr. Srinivas, for this excellent organization. Mr. Srinivas, you are doing a marvelous service to the country by making people aware of their responsibilities as good civil servants and good citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Arora.
We have officers from the 2019 and 2020 batch. I'll have to switch this off. Mr. Temni, I'll just come back to you, sir. Let me invite an officer from the 2019 batch, Mr. Akash, who's in the web room. Do you have any questions? And one officer from the 2020 batch, Archana Dubey. Mr. Akash from 2019 batch. Mr. Akash.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Yes. Can you switch on your camera, please? Yes. Now we can see you. Yes. Do you have any questions or comments on the discussion?
Yes, sir.
Kudhari ji wants to hear younger
everyone.
officers.
And comments in the sense. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Hello. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, we can hear you. Please continue.
Yes, sir. It was a very insightful discussion that I was a part of. I was listening to.
Yes, please continue. Please continue.
All the distinguished speakers.
I think we'll come back to you, Akash. I think we can't hear you. We can't hear you.
There needs to be guidance.
Yes. You could log out and log in again. I'll invite a 2020 batch officer, Archana Dubey.
Okay.
Archana ji.
We can take more.
Good morning, everyone.
Yes.
Actually, I work for IC Center for Governance.
Oh, you are with the IC Center. Okay. Yes. Anybody from the 2020 batch? Any officer from 2020 batch? 2019 they're there. Shall we take Mr. Taimni's question? Mr. Taimni, you had a question, please. Mr. Taimni, we can hear you. Yes, please continue.
All right. Thank you so much, Sanjay. And first, starting with a compliment to Mr. Bharat for the book. Very well written book. Before that, I like to address 2 points to Dr. Siddharth. He mentioned in his presentation 2 points. One is with regard to the ethics and other with regard to public service. I will only request him to look into these 2 points. First, that we should develop a code of ethics for public servants. And number 2, Government of India had introduced a bill on delivery of public services but it was allowed to lapse. Very, very unfortunate. I leave the thought with him to take initiative to revive that. Having said that, I will now, I already discussed something with Mr. Bharat, but I'd like to point out two things. One, that he, I don't know how many of you know the book, he made a difference between ethics in public service and persuaders who deal as ethics for and ethics of public service. I think that is very, very, I appreciate that for a long time. God bless. And secondly, as part of ethics, he has introduced three other points which I think the country should adopt. One is humility, second is compassion, and third is time for keeping our word. I think if we can maintain these, the book would achieve its objective in popularizing and implementing what is ethics in public service. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. And I hope that during the next declaration of list of beneficiaries on 26th January 2023, Mr. Bharat contribution is mentioned there and is recognized in one of the country's best models, that is starting with further Bhushan to Mother Bhushan, which he richly deserves. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Temni. I think we are now reaching the last stage of the book discussion, and I'll request Dr. A.P. Singh to kindly extend. Acha,
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes, there is
come
one. I think there is one request. I'm requesting to all the 2019 and 20 batch officers, to all officers, we have the email ID number. We have sent you an invitation to you. If you have any query, any question in your mind, and all of you, I'm saying all of you, you can send us. You can send us through email. We will depute one officer to look after all the question, and we will prepare a question bank, and we will go through. So kindly send your, if you have any, I think the disturbance in net or anything, so you may send the question, you may send your query through email. Thank you.
Send it to all the participants here, including the 2019 and 20 batch.
Sir, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Dr. A.P. Singh ji, please. Yes.
Thank you very much, sir. Respected Shri Pirmat Kumar, sir, former Cabinet Secretary, first Governor of Jharkhand, and the author of the book. Chief Guest Shri Sanjay Kothari, sir, former Chief Vigilance Commissioner of India. Lead discussion Shri B. Srinivas, Secretary DRPG and EG NCGG. Srimati Keshni Anand Arora, former Chief Secretary, Government of Haryana. Professor Poonam Singh, NCG Head Office, New Delhi. And most importantly, participant of the book discussion event. As we come to the close of this event, it's my pleasure to deliver the vote of thanks on behalf of National Center for Good Governance to all who have helped make this event such a success. I would especially like to thank the author of book, Shri Pirmat Kumar sir, for coming out with this gem of book, which contains a great amount of wisdom and knowledge on the subject. The lucid language, the simple approach, and real-life experiences make the book easy to understand and apply. With this long and varied experience of administrating the services at various levels, he has presented a first-hand account and insider's view of the subject, which will make the practitioners understand and realize the importance of the subject. I would also like to thank Shri Sanjay Kudhari sir, former Chief Vigilance Commissioner, Government of India, for sparing his valuable time and gracing this prestigious event of book discussion. I would also like to add that Sir has been a source of constant support since the formation of the National Center for Good Governance in the year 2014. I am further thankful to lead discussion of today, Shri V. Srinivas sir, who has played a vital role in developing a thought for this event and has provided valuable insight into the subject of public service ethics in general and particularly with reference to the book. I would like to add that DG sir is a source of continued inspiration and motivation to all of us. I would also like to pay my gratitude to respected Shri Keshni Anand Arora Madam for gracing the event as a lead discussant. Madam has always been a source of great support to NCGG and has been sharing her valuable knowledge and wisdom in international and national training programs being conducted by the Institute over the past several years. I also wish to thank Madam Poonam Singh, who has always been a great support behind such type of events. Thanks are also due to our colleague Dr. B.S. Best, Associate Professor NCGG, Missouri, and other officials from NCGG for taking participation in the event. Above all, I thank all the participants whose participation has made this event successful. To conclude, let me once again reiterate my gratitude to all of you. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you very much to all.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.